Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Rise and Grind. And I'm 72 the Architect, aka Jason B. And today we're going to talk about how we can get unstuck by finding out what do you believe. So stay tuned as we get started live on Breakout and YouTube. Good morning, everybody. How's today going for you? It started, it's 8 o'clock. We're getting to go, at least for some of us here in California, and for others, maybe in the East Coast, it's probably the later half of your morning. But it's Tuesday. And have you given it much thought about how you want to really change a lot of good things in your life? Rise and Grind has always been about how we can better ourselves, how we can take it to the next level, how we can look at ourselves clearly without obstruction. But a lot of times, there are a couple of big things that get in our way. And let me go over some of those things. The first thing is our habits. Our habits form our beliefs. Yes, that's right. The second thing, the beliefs. Now, you have habits and beliefs, and they work together. Now, whether they're good or bad, however they've been formed, they're in your life. And those beliefs create correlations. They create an avenue, a pathway of how you're going to choose from one thing to the next. When I look at what's gotten in my way, a lot of times it's been my own self sabotage. And where did it come from? I had to ask myself a few careful, crafted questions, really from the get go. When I looked at what I was actually going to do and how I was going to approach it, I started a journey last night, which I'm going to kind of keep private, but let's just say I wanted to really explore my own capacity. What was getting in my way? What do I believe about myself? I've read plenty of self help books, thoughtfulness. I've involved myself in philosophy, but without asking myself the proper questions, the true stoic questions, so to speak. I had to really think about what is in my way. So when I started writing down some of my bad habits and my good habits, what do they do to formulate my decision making, my understanding, my belief, right? If I do this, I can do that. If I have the experience, then I can rely on that. And too much in this world, we tend to depend on things that are untrue. Yesterday, I was in some conversations and I listened very carefully about how people negotiated themselves out of their opportunity. They negotiated their self into paralysis with analysis. And as I began to listen to some of these conversations and not really take a position, I learned more about them, but also I learned something about myself. I learned that, by me constantly wanting to be of value, interjecting, offer an opinion, I interrupted something. I interrupted their way. I interrupted what they may feel is rude. And how I take it when I'm being rude or someone's being rude to me. So when I started looking at my habits, I really had to look at, what got me there. Now, as a little kid, like so many other people, I've struggled. I could share the experience that, I didn't have both my parents, or I could share that I was poor growing up. I didn't have the support system that I needed desperately. And as I was reading in the Daily Dad by Ryan Holiday, which actually let me pull out some of this stuff. As I was reading the Daily Dad, it really dawned on me about what I may have been doing. And I didn't read yesterday's until yesterday's excerpt. And I want to share it with you just really quickly, you know, and what it basically said was this: Each of us picked things up in childhood. We all have issues. We have baggage. We have flaws with decisions to have kids, the means and the face the flaws. As Jessica Lay, the wonderful author of The Gift of Failure, a great book on for parents and teachers, said when asked what she's learned about being a mother, having to face the flaws. I thought I could keep a secret buried from the world because I wanted to do better from this new person. The flaws in me, I've been so glad of hiding or good at hiding through excelling academically or being charismatic, start to poke through it because it mattered to someone others than me. For me, those flaws, the definiteness around my potential flaws. Go figure. My tendency to disconnect and distract from whatever happened right in front of me in favor of whatever is next, and notably substance abuse. If I'd never had children, I probably could kept the stuff buried, but parenthood demanded that I deal with it. In other in order to model a healthy, loving, productive humanity to my kids, if you want to be great, a great parent, you're going to have to deal with your crap and you can't carry baggage. It's too dangerous. With a kid around you, you risk it dropping them. And there can be more hiding, no more deferring. The bill is due and you have to pay it. Therapy, conversations with your spouse, in these pages of the journal. You have to face the flaws because there are little people who did not choose to be stuck in the same house with you and should have to be trapped with a monster or a brick wall for a parent. Now, that really hit home for me because what she just basically said was so many things. She basically said that whatever you're trying to hide, you may be thinking you're slick, but in that hiding, it becomes a habit. And you don't realize, like, for example, if you have kids, I'm a parent, sometimes a full time parent, other times not. I got 3 kids from 3 different moms, and they're carrying weight. Is it solely because of me? No. But what I learned and what I have realized lately is that we carry our own generational baggage from one parent to the next. And these baggages, this garbage, a lot of times carries over into the next generation until you're ready to stop, until someone figures out, wait, this is not the way. And what I had to do, or what I'm doing, I should say, keyword, I'm doing, is I have to abandon a lot of the things that have always been familiar to me. But what those things have been familiar to me have been like more like a chain and ball and just not a pathway I can keep going at. And when I understand that, then I understand who's the teacher. What am I teaching? The more I try to hide, my kids have watched. They look and see what I am. They look and see what I do. They look and see how I handle anger. They look and see how you delegate your duties, your work, facing your obstacles, you're facing your adversaries. The only way to do things is to face your flaws, is what that passage was saying. And when we face, excuse me, our flaws and our habits, then we understand what we believe, because what we may be believing can get in your way. And I've seen it constantly. I was expressing to friends, please don't talk to me. Don't greet me in the beginning of conversation with your negative bat. If I ask you how you're doing, close friends that I have told them, like, look, I just don't want to hear the obstacles. I want to greet you, get into this conversation, or spend some time, look at the pleasantries, and deal as we go. And if I'm qualified to actually handle your problem, ask my permission. And I did this, and some of them kind of like, who the hell you think you are? But it was me that was taking conscious hold of my attention and who I'm around. So that habit, or that me making that declaration has to be followed up by actions. And the more that I did this, the more that I do this, I should say, the more that I do this, it becomes repetitional practice. And that practice literally forms a mold. And that mold will produce more thoughts, it will produce more things, it will produce more tendencies of reactions. But it needs reflection, needs careful reflection. And so when I look at what is taking place, I look at how I want to have my life go forward. All these things, you know, they come with a cost, honestly. They do. They come with a cost, and you have to be able to and willing enough to just face it and say, okay, well, because I do this, these are the tendencies of this result of this objective, this question, this thing. And there's no amount of excuses you can create that will excuse yourself, because at the end of the day, no one cares. No one cares about your excuses. They may listen to you, but it's kind of like more like a passing by. Okay, thank you. And then they're naturally dismissive, of course. But when we get to that point of being authentic, when we get to that point where it's more important to realize what is at stake. That's right. What is at stake? When you actually understand your decision and then your habit, now you can face truly your obstacles. I've talked about rise and grind for so long, and as I'm getting ready, this is my last week of doing rise and grind. I will not be doing rise and grind, the brand or the label, as of July 1st. I rise and grind will come to a close in my experience, and I will be moving on to my Stoic Circus. So be on the lookout for that. Just as a quick break. But getting back to what I'm saying, when I look at what I believe, it's based on the experience, you know, the outcomes and reflections and habits, and all that starts with step one. And then the way that you repeat step one or step two, whatever it is, the way that you follow it up. Sometimes you're not going to know the right choice until you've made a commitment to do. And when you fail or when you falter and it didn't work out, it's like, okay, well, what did I learn from this? How will I really appreciate what I do, without some experience, reflection, thought? It's like being a scientist. It's like, imagine yourself, you're like Thomas Edison, and you got 1,000 or you got 2,000 filaments, and you've got to go through which one is going to create the light bulb. The amount of frustration that goes along with creating a pathway for success is going to come with a lot of misfires. But it's how you recover. What did you observe about the misfire? What did you observe about the conversations? And a lot of times, many of our personal problems come from the words that come out of our mouth and how we engage with others. That is a habit, believe it or not. There are so many people that will I am literally now making a conscious decision to be less around the frequency of people that just interrupt me. And also that takes me into a responsive category of me not interrupting them. What could you learn from somebody else by not reacting? You have initial feeling, and maybe it's wrong or passion about what someone's talking about or doing, and you may have a strong objection or agreement. What can you do to reserve yourself before giving that initial reaction or that talk, that facial or the words? If you delayed, maybe there needs to be no response. And a lot of times, the best way you can point this out is your beefs or someone else's problem with another person. And that person asks you to join in, and they're telling you all about what's going on. But in Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power, take no side, he says. He takes absolutely no side. Take no side in the objection or in the argument. Matter of fact, yesterday, I'm listening to a colleague of mine, a friend, I'd say more like a colleague, and they were literally talking about they were being manipulated into a decision with their co-parent. Co-parent's not taking really responsibility, and the kid is just riding the gravy train. And I know what that feels like. I know how that feels. I know when my kid is playing both sides of the coin. Now I understand. And with that understanding, what did it teach me now? Well, yes, there needs to be teamwork in that parental model. But the acquaintance or my colleagues said this. They said, my husband and my child teamed up on me, and I just went in with it. I just don't want any problems. Well, you're going to continue to have that same problem because the belief that if you go along with it, who's it going to hurt? What's it going to hurt? What is going to be the takeaway? And so, you know, how we choose that path is based on the frequency, that self frequency. And when I look at my self frequency, it's been under shrouds and darkness and heavy weight. I mean, I look at pictures of my childhood and there's always a frown on my face. There, yeah, I was weighed down so much by my parents' stuff, and I don't like using but very much, but, but presently, I relieve them of that responsibility. My inner child, the inner boy in me that's been crazy at the wheel, I'm telling him, look, you need to sit down. You've had your time, and I'm not going to allow you to do this anymore. I'm not going to allow you to drive. I'm not going to no matter what kind of tantrums you want to throw, anxiety, depression, being upset, no matter what takes place, I'm just not going to let you take control. And that is me parenting myself. That is me training myself to be a better parent to me. Because when the things that I want, um, having my daughters back in my life, all of them, I have one, and whatever actions I've done or haven't done, it doesn't matter. What does matter is that I can grow to be a better example for myself and them. To put aside that boy who is just erratic, who impulsive, scared at times, false promoting, just like what 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 was her name? Let me look at her name again. Jessica Lay, Lahey. And when I look at what she said, just even the flaws in me, I've been so good at hiding through, excelling academically and being charismatic. Whoa, that's huge. How many of us hide behind our smarts? It's like, whoa, guess what? I've been hiding behind my academia. I've been hiding behind my and the way that you can catch people doing this is that they're not relatable. But see, you can't hide that for much longer. You can't, it doesn't work. And so it becomes a distraction, and the passion and the charisma that people are expressing about, like when they raise their octave and their volume about their voice, um, when they do this, it's to deter you away from their challenge. But the one thing that you can do, and my girlfriend did this to me, is she quieted down and she asked me, she goes, Jason, I need to ask you a calm question, and please answer me honestly. I hear what you're saying, but can you please tell me the truth about this? And instead of like reacting so emotionally and going, and how dare you ask me these questions? When she did this, the man inside me that needed to stand up said, okay. And I knew it was going to hurt what she was asking me about. But instead of continuing the habit, I allowed myself to be relatable. I allowed myself to get out of my habit and defending myself academically and my smarts and using colorful explanations and stories and all that shit. I I chose, honestly, I chose to answer. And it hurt both of us. And seeing the aftermath of what she was asking me about, it opened up a new door because no longer did I have that belief and having to keep up that habit and that presentation, that passion, that charisma that I know what I'm doing in this matter. And reality was I didn't. And so on the whole point is it really gets down to the honesty with yourself, the trustworthiness with yourself. And when you build that, it should be common sense, right? When you build that, then we have something to work with. But see what happens, what is a deterrent from you developing is the way in which the world, you've acclimated yourself. I don't want to be seen as the bad one. I don't want to be in the dark place. I don't want to be the dirty one. I don't want to be in the corner. I don't want to be any of that. Just take the pressure off me. I've got enough pressure. But all that pressure you built was over time. All that pressure that you sustained was slow, misguided, all this stuff. And you go nowhere. You don't go further on anything. And so what I'm trying to say here is that you're gonna have to, so to speak, burn the boats down. Where does that come from? Well, there's a story of Cortez, which I really don't like the historical character, but when he came to the Americas to stop his men from taking off in the ship, he's like, I scuttled the boats, I burned the boats, and so now they have to commit to being here, whether they like it or not. Well, imagine that whole new world. Natives want to kill you, but you had to stand your ground. And I don't like this analogy. I really don't, but it has significance to me. It has significance because when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, you're going to have to face yourself. You're going to have to face those daily obstacles. You're going to have to inject daily, really daily, things that truly matter. And I like what the Daily Stoics said for yesterday, because it asked me, try the opposite of what you're trying to get against. Like this one, I think it was Viktor Frankl. Yeah, it was a psychologist. He was asked how to treat his patients who could not get to sleep, right? And so his thought was, well, why don't I tell my patients and challenge them instead of trying to get to sleep, avoid going to sleep. And eventually, I don't know the complete merits of that, but the story goes that he basically, by telling them this, they tried to stay up, but they end up being exhausted and they created the patterns to be able to go to sleep and make better decisions. So, what am I saying about that about to you? And to you, I would say to everyone, and including myself, by which I've been trying to correct so hard. Guess what? Just face it as it comes. Get it just little by little or a lot by a lot. But do the opposite of what you're trying to do right now. Do the difference. Experiment. Don't be afraid to try new things, try new methods. Don't be afraid to not actually have an opinion about anything. Seneca and Epictetus were big advocates of this. By saying sometimes nothing about others matters, what does it alleviate us? It alleviates our responsibility because sometimes you just don't need to be an ally of a thought that's developed out of immaturity and a belief. And the best way I can explain this would have to be politics. In the United States, we have initially a two-party system. We have Republicans and we have Democrats. And what's interesting about this example is that they both have significant beliefs that the other is wrong and not capable of making any correct decision. Ideological beliefs, right? It happens. And in the middle, people are casualties and they have to uniformly agree in their party to get people to go along because enough inertia of people agreeing in opinions and statements, it shows that they're unified and that they are the stronger. But this flawed thinking, this flawed believing means you're a fool to the folly. What is your own independent thought? What if I told nobody my political views? What if I told people like I do now? I am an independent with no party affiliation. I choose my own politics and I do not discuss who I will vote for. End of story. If imagine that, imagine if all these organizations and things, and I'm going off on a tangent here, but imagine if they had no way of measuring your opinion or your vote. Imagine the polling could not exist. Would we have different outcomes in our leadership? And I do believe we would. But see, we believe that if we are so passionate about something, to have you follow along, like the Republicans saying, the laptop theory, or you're trying to take away our guns. And then on the left, the Democrats are saying, like Gavin Newsom's like, hey, we need to create a 28th Amendment to take away all guns. All the laws previous haven't mattered, right? That doesn't necessarily solve anything. Making more laws in regards to, say, like gun laws does not correct the problem. It's a behavior problem. It's a thing that where we have to understand that if you want to change and get unstuck, you have to abandon the self-beliefs. You have to get rid of everything that you held on to so dearly that got in your way. Matter of fact, I have an interesting character in my audience. Let me invite him to the stage. And this man, I want to talk about a colleague, and I would call him friend, James, who I've gotten to know, and his story about, he talked to me about how he had to go from square zero to build up his own personal brand and his empire. But when I talked to him, he had interesting things to say about, you know, when you have to go square zero, you have no more excuses. James, welcome to Rise and Grind. Um, yeah, out of just a break in what I'm doing, out of what I'm saying, did you have to change your beliefs to get better progress? That would be my question.
Absolutely, you got to change your beliefs. The person you want to become, that's the person who you are. You have to change your mindset to believe, as that person would, to accomplish the things you want.
And I think that's huge because when you change your belief, when you change your belief, now you have whole brand new processes to have to undergo, right? There's just everything that you knew before, or most of everything, is going to have to be abandoned, so to speak. And when we understand what we believe is probably most of the time getting in our way, then we now understand, and you have to be the observer on this. You have to be. You have to observe yourself. You have to see, like, okay, well, these beliefs got me in trouble. They got me broke. They got me homeless, or they got me in a shitty situation. Now I have to face it and deal with it. And it is scary. So when you started your own business, James, when you started from square one, you know, were did you eat like a limited diet? Did you sleep on couches? Did you have to believe more in yourself than anything else?
When I hit a start all over, I was homeless, living on a couch, was not custody of 3 little girls.
Okay.
Everything I knew put me in a position where I lost everything. So I bought into the belief system that everything was going to be okay. If I just going about my business the way I was going about my business, and that's what puts me in the position I'm in.
Wow. But it also probably opened up a lot of brand new opportunities. It opened up probably when you have to go to back to square one and you really have the mindset to literally let go of processes that just do not work, right? You know, and you just like starting like, okay, what can I learn from this? What can I learn from another person, so to speak, um, that matters? And when I do this, when I can choose to learn from somebody instead of respond or offer just what I think that I've never done, it opens a whole new script. It opens up a whole new platform. It opens up a new liveliness. And if you're careful and you realize the power that what you got in your hands is so amazing, when you realize this, you're like, I don't want shouldn't everyone know this? Shouldn't everybody get this? And they don't. They don't get it because they, again, going back to the beginning of my talk, they hold on to a belief. They hold on to a process. And when they hold on to that process, it becomes egotistical, maniacal. And it's like, and if they defy it, that literally bewilders them, stresses them out. They'll start claiming I have anxiety. I have all these things that I have PTSD, I have ADHD, I'm an empath. All these self labels. And no offense to y'all who do this, but when the shroud is pulled up and you do not have that corner to hide anymore, you only dealing with yourself. And the faster or the better you realize, like, well, this is just doing me a disservice. When I realize that, now I have access points. Okay, now I abandon those bad beliefs. Now abandon the things that don't matter. Idle conversations, arguments with people that don't matter, because people who get so passionate about other people's business, you got to think, including myself, I've done this. The more that you think about it, the more that you're going to stop eventually, because you're going to be exhausted. I have exited conversations where people just drain the fuck out of me. Excuse my language. They drain the hell out of me. And when I look at what has taken place, then I'm like, either do it again or be on autopilot, whatever, or maybe I just don't need to be around that kind of frequency. They ask me why am I not around or what am I not doing? Well, guess what? I'm choosing a brand new path because I'm willing to take that risk. And I think that's where a lot of us are. We don't want to take risks. We want to know and see, did someone else do this? You got to be your own pioneer, so to speak. So that's pretty much it. If you want to get unstuck, how we get unstuck is change your beliefs about what you see your obstacles are. You change your beliefs by changing your habits. Changing your habits means doing the uncomfortable things. Like, say, like, one of my bad habits, I hate folding laundry. I will let clean clothes sit in a laundry bag after I just wash my clothes, and they'll get there until I'm ready to pull something out. But the more that and same with making my bed. I hate making my bed. But you know what? The more I put frequency into doing the opposite, just go do it. Fold your clothes. As soon as they're done drying, bam, put them away. You may want to do other things, but completing the more smaller tasks in frequency and consistency lead to the bigger things and change the way that you do the bigger things in life and change the way that you understand things. And the more that you're into completing things, guess what? You feel better. You live better. You know, like I was just talking to my future brother-in-law. Man, want to talk about a guy who totally changed his life in 1 year. And I got to talk about him. I was visiting with him not too long ago, and we were talking about, let's say, certain sensitive materials. And we were talking, and I looked in his living room. I only been in his house one time, and I just remember before it wasn't all that great, but no disrespect on him. But he was with somebody who was him and that person, they were just taking each other down, criticizing, constantly negative. But when he started his journey of like internally healing and dealing with himself, um, his attitude started changing. And then when I looked in his place, the place was immaculate, had beautiful murals, art, more patience. He's easier going. He's not so reactive. I was like, yo. And as I was talking about the sensitive material that I really don't want to say on air, but when we are talking about the methods of getting to where he's at, he was like, I had to change my beliefs. I had to change my habits. I had to change all these things, but it wasn't going to be done overnight. It had to be done progressively, actively, and looking at yourself in reflection. That's why when I write in my journal, when I journal every day now, I write a couple questions to myself. I give direct answers, short answers, 2 sentences per question, and to make a point. And then I write my reflection. My reflection is allows how I look at myself, how I look at things, and look about my beliefs. And when I do this and I look myself in the mirror and I look at all, I'm not hiding. And the more that I do that, it's completed consistency. So anyhow, that's all I have for today. Hey, James, thanks so much for sharing your story. I do appreciate it. You're definitely a guy I appreciate having you around. And when I do get to talk to you, it's always a good thing. So thanks for being around. I definitely appreciate coming out on Breakout. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, this is the last week of Rise and Grind. So I will probably be making my last episode. What is today? The 27th. So my last day for Rise and Grind will be Friday. And starting next week, I will be doing my Stoic Circus, my brand new podcast. It is an upgrade from Rise and Grind. I'm doing it for label and branding purposes. So I'll be able to release the information and the website by this weekend. So anyhow, thank you all. We'll see you all next time. Y'all take care. Have a great day.